Hello everyone, welcome to another reaction video. Today I'll be reacting to how America became a superpower. Guys, I'm going on a world exploration. Please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and also smash the like button to get more content. And let's get into the video.
History, with over 800 military bases and 37% of global military spending. The US has become the leader of a vast, interconnected global system that has helped usher in an era of unprecedented prosperity and low levels of conflict. To understand America's position in the world, and why it's so pivotal for world politics as we know it, you have to go back to the country's founding, back to when America wasn't a global power in any sense of the word.
Yeah, guys, just before we continue in this video, one of the reasons why I'm watching this video is because the last 3 to 4 videos I've been watching about watching videos that have enlightened me about how powerful the United States is. So I just want to watch this video. I think this will be like the last of the US based videos in terms of military power. So and I hope this video can give me a full round of how America became this powerful and how and what led to it and how everything turned out to be so almost perfect for the United States in terms of military and power.
During the first 70 years of its existence, the United States expanded in both territory and influence in North America, eventually reaching the Pacific Ocean, in a wave of expansionism that resulted in the wholesale slaughter of the indigenous people who populated the continent. But early Americans were deeply divided as to whether the country should expand beyond the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. This became a major debate after the Civil War, when some leaders, like post-war Secretary of State Seward, argued that America should push to become a global power. Seward succeeded in pushing a plan to purchase Alaska from Russia, but his attempts to buy Greenland and Iceland, as well as annexed territory in the Caribbean, were all blocked by Congress. That's because
I think I saw a video that talked about why Russia sold Alaska to the US. I think I'll watch a video. I think I'll watch that particular video or why the Russians sold Alaska to the US, because I've always found it very, very weird why the state is so far away from the main country. I've always found it very, very weird. Like, even since when I was young, and when I used to look at the map, it used to look weird to me. Like, that is part of the United States. That was always very weird. So I would like to know why Russia sold it to the US. So I think that will be later. I'm not really sure when I'm going to make that particular video, but
some Americans, including many on Capitol Hill, had a strong anti-imperialist bent. These people worried about America getting more involved in global politics, as well as having to integrate populations from quote-unquote inferior races. And this opposition implied major checks on the imperialist urge to expand. But something was happening in the late 1800s that would change the debate about American expansionism. The Industrial Revolution produced explosive economic growth, and the bigger US economy required a more centralized state and bureaucracy to manage the growing economy. Power became concentrated in the federal government, making it easier for expansionist presidents, like William McKinley, to unilaterally push American influence abroad. The key turning point came in 1898, when President McKinley dragged the country into war with Spain over Cuba, despite some intense domestic opposition. The rising United States easily defeated the moribund Spanish Empire, acquiring Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines in the process. Over the next 2 years, the US would annex the Kingdom of Hawaii, Wake Island, and American Samoa. A few years later, the US took control of the Panama Canal Zone.
I've always been hearing this. You guys can help to enlighten me here. Like, are these islands part of the US? Like, are they counted as states in the US? This island, that is Hawaii, Guam, which other one there? The Wake Island. Yeah. Like, are they part of the United States? Like, are they, like, if you want to list states in the United States, would they list these islands as states, or is it just under the control of the US but not part of the US? I would like to know. Also, if there's any video that can elaborate on that, I would like to watch it. If you guys know of any video like that, can put a link down in the comments below. Because I don't really understand, like, Puerto Rico, Guam, Hawaii, like, I don't know. I would like to understand well.
Over the next 2 years, the US would annex the Kingdom of Hawaii, Wake Island, and American Samoa. A few years later, the US took control of the Panama Canal Zone and sent troops to occupy the Dominican Republic. It also purchased the American Virgin Islands. This period of rapid acquisition of far-flung territories put the US on the map as a truly global power. During this time, America also began using its influence to protect its growing commercial and military interests abroad, installing pro-American regimes in places like Nicaragua, and playing a major role in international diplomacy regarding the Western presence in China. World War I showed just how much America's influence had grown. Not only was American intervention a decisive factor in the war's end, but President Wilson attended the Paris Peace Conference, which ended the war, and attempted to set the terms.
Wait, I didn't know that the US was part of World War One. I thought it was only World War Two. I thought World War One was just European countries. Wow, that is surprising. I think my next video should be World War One. I would like to learn that particular history. So I'm actually surprised. I thought the US was not part of World War One. At least I'm learning something here.
To the peace. He spearheaded America's most ambitious foreign policy initiative yet, an international organization called the League of Nations, designed to promote peace and cooperation globally. The League, a wholesale effort to remake global politics, showed just how ambitious American foreign policy had become. Yet isolationism was still a major force in the United States. Congress blocked the United States from joining the League of Nations, dooming Wilson's project. During the Great Depression and the rise of Hitler, the US was much more focused on its own region than on European affairs. Ultimately, America's ever-growing entanglements abroad made it impossible for it to stay out of global affairs entirely. In East Asia, the growing Japanese Empire posed a direct threat to American possessions and troops, bringing the United States and Japan into conflict. This culminated in the Pearl Harbor attack, bringing the United States into World War II. World War II would transform America's global presence forever. The United States was the only major power to avoid economic ruin during the war, and it was the sole country equipped with atomic weapons. As such, it was in a unique position to set the terms of the peace, and, with the aim of preventing another war in mind, it took advantage. The most famous example of this is the creation of the United Nations. The UN Charter set up a system of international law prohibiting wars of conquest, like the ones waged by the Nazis and the Japanese. It also served as a forum in which the international community could weigh in on disputes and help resolve them. This way, the Americans hoped, great powers could resolve their differences through compromise and law rather than war. But while the UN is the most famous of the post-war institutions, it isn't the only one. 730 delegates from all 44 allied nations came together in a small vacation haven in New Hampshire. Their goal? To establish a global financial system that would prevent another Great Depression and World War. The resulting agreement, called the Bretton Woods Agreement, ultimately became the backbone of the global financial system, resulting in the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. By creating these institutions, the United States committed itself to being deeply involved in the world's problems. The issue, though, is that the world's second largest power, the Soviet Union, saw things differently. World War II had made allies out of the democratic West and communist East in the fight against Hitler, but that couldn't last. The United States saw Soviet expansion in Eastern Europe and elsewhere as a direct threat to its vision.
It's always so remarkable when I think about World War II. I mean, look at this map. Look at this map. Just the way it is right now. Look at this map. Germany is just somewhere here. I mean, like, so small. And they were so powerful and they were able to cause that much damage. I mean, like, of course, like what they did was so terrible. But sometimes when you think about all these kind of things, how small countries are able to exert that much power, just the way the British Empire was able to do it in a couple of centuries, and how the Nazi Germany were able to actually pull this off. And I hope to learn that when I watch the World War II video to understand how that came to pass. But it's really, 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 really I mean, I don't want to use the word remarkable because what they did was terrible, but I mean, I don't know the word to use that will not give them a compliment, but the way they were able to exert that much power, and it took almost the whole world, like from what they are saying here, the communist East and the capitalist West, or wasn't the word that was used there. They came together against them. That is crazy. That's really crazy.
Of a free trading democratic world.
Okay, yeah,
To a
democratic
substantial
West.
degree, in one form or another, socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth. And the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty.
Fearful of Soviet intentions towards Western Europe, the US and other European nations created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military alliance meant to stop Russia from invading other countries in Europe. Globally, the US committed to a strategy called containment, so called because it was aimed at containing the spread of communism everywhere on the globe.
In that particular statement is really vital because of what's going on in Ukraine right now. Clearly, NATO was created just because of Russia. It wasn't even for just in terms of protecting these countries itself, like the countries that are part of NATO. It was just Russia. That is it, Russia. No one that Putin is so paranoid about NATO because it's Russia, NATO against Russia. That's just it. Which is
This new global struggle meant that the US had to exert influence everywhere, all the time. Instead of disbanding the massive military machine created for World War II, the wheels mostly kept turning. This had two main results. First, the US was pulled into unlikely alliances with countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and South Korea, seeing each of them as bulwarks against communist influence in their region. Secondly, the US began intervening, often secretly, in dozens of countries to contain Soviet influence. Sometimes this meant propping up sympathetic dictators, like in Iran. Other times, it meant supplying rebels with arms and money, like in Afghanistan in 1979 and Nicaragua in 1985. Over the course of the Cold War, the US intervened in hundreds of disputes around the globe, ending up with a complicated set of alliances, tensions, and relationships in basically every corner of the earth.
damn.
After
Russia-
the Berlin Wall fell,
Russia
the US
just isolated in that map.
severing ties with its allies and drawing down the size of its military. And while the US did decrease military spending, much of the military infrastructure and alliances from the Cold War remained. Presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton decided that it was in both America and the world's interests for the United States, now the sole superpower on Earth, to continue actively managing global affairs.
We should be and we must be peacemakers.
NATO, created solely as a tool for countering the Soviet Union, stayed together and even expanded, a way of keeping European nations united in the absence of the Soviet threat. Washington's support for countries like Israel and Japan stayed intact, ostensibly as a means of preventing war in their respective regions. The global system of alliances and institutions created to keep the peace during the Cold War became permanent, as did the American military and political commitments necessary to keep them running. This system remains in operation today, and no leading American politician since the Cold War has seriously called for dismantling it. Except, perhaps, for Donald Trump. Trump has said contradictory things about these commitments, but he's consistently argued that American allies are not paying the US enough for its protection, and questioned the value of free trade. That calls NATO and even the World Trade Organization into question.
At some point, we have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia, nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
This is a sharp divergence from the consensus that has dominated US foreign policy since 1945, and something closer to the isolationism that came before it. So will President Trump act on some of candidate Trump's ideas and reverse decades worth of institution building and alliances? We'll find out soon enough.
Wow, that was a nice video, very nice video. That towards the end there, it was getting funny to me because I've always found Trump to be a very funny man. I know most Americans don't like him, but I mean, I'm not living there. I'm not living in the US, so I don't really know, don't really understand the policies and the rest of it. I'm just going by what I see on TV. The man is funny. I mean, he's a very funny man, and and what he actually said concerning the NATO alliance. I mean, you could get the point of him saying that these countries are not paying enough for it, but it's really, really dangerous trying to reverse a policy that has been in place for over 60 years. You know, it's though I could understand why it could feel like these countries are not contributing enough, that the US are handling most of the financial burden, which I don't know whether it's right or not, but I'm just saying, like, if from what he said, I could get that point. But reversing something that has been working, at least has been working for over how many years, I don't really think it was wise. Well, anyway, he's no more the president now, so I don't really know. Maybe Joe Biden has, obviously, from what we are seeing in Russia with the NATO countries supporting Ukraine. So obviously, NATO is as strong as ever. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this reaction. This one was a bit, it wasn't as fun. It was a bit serious. I think, like, it wasn't like the ones I've been watching that kind of like fun. It was kind of serious because it's something that it's like a current kind of video, like something that is affecting each and every one of us right now. So it was kind of a bit more serious than the other videos I've been watching, like the history ones or just the hypothetical videos about how powerful the US is. Anyway, guys, that'll be all for today. Like the video on your way out. Till next time. Peace.